I will talk about the National Gallery of Armenia. The National Gallery of this largest art museum in Armenia, located on the Yerevan Republic Square. The museum has one of the most prominent locations in the Armenian capital. The NGA has significant collection of the Russian and Eastern European art, and the world's largest collection of the Armenian art. The museum opened 65,000 visitors in 2005. At the point, the museum has just the art department that offers several changes. It became the National Gallery of the Armenia. In 1921 to 1935, the National Gallery of Armenia was founded in 1931 by the decision of the Soviet Armenian government. As the art department, one of the 5 departments of the State Museum. The State Museum was then located on the Artofil Street. The museum also housed the public library and the concert hall. In 1935 to 1947, at the end of the 1924, by the request of the Armenian and I'm sorry, art, history, and moving rubbing moved from the Leningrad to the Yerevan, quitting his work in the State Russian Museum in 1925. Rabin shared the responsibility of the head of the Department of Fine Art, and in 1935, then the substantially enriched and expanded department grew into a independent museum of the fine art. Rabin became its first director serving in this post until 1955. In 1947 to 1991, in 1947, the museum was renamed the State Gallery of the Armenia until 1991, when it was again renamed the National Gallery of the Armenia. The year 1948 marked the beginning of the reconstruction of the museum building. In 1991 to 2011, in 1991, the Republic of Armenia entered the history known as the Public Streak. The country before the independence, this event was significant because independence was something that the Armenian people had been fighting toward for centuries. This decisive victory was accompanied by a number of the problems of the newly formed republic, activities of which were reflected in the cultural life. The country had a serious public, socio-economic, and cultural crisis, along with the scientific and the cultural establishment. The State Gallery of Armenia also had to bear many hardships during that time. Looking back at the history of the National Gallery of Armenia for the past 30 years, the NGE has established many cultural diversification, utilizing the museum to its fullest capability and substantiate the National Gallery will obviously continue its devoted work to expansion and continuously develop and enrich it with new art, activity, and culture. This is the collective varieties. The painting What People Think About Me by the Vasily Polyakov. It's a painting that keeps my eye on it. This painting is released still created in 1900 and tells the story of the religion of the life of Christ. The collection is an old religiously at 8.2 inches high. The painter makes the figures background persons and color easily. I went to related school in my high school and studied religion for 4 years, so I always respond to this point. For the learning moderation, The crest in the painting looks like our plant, and its leaf is always around 2 months. Another wall what I choose is Lava House Backyard by Mark Scheider. It was painted in 1980 in a 90 art scale. The art is 18.1 inches away and 23.8 inches high. With the wall of the Japanese period is painted style, and he attracted everyone who saw his painting with his sincere and poetic spirit. I also like this painting, which is white. When I look at it, I feel the quiet emotion that this painting gives.
Hello everyone, my name is Jasmine Perez and I'm going to be talking about the exhibitions. And right here I have the exhibitions page, which includes a list of exhibitions that are currently being shown or have been shown in the past. And these are only some of them, but there's the Statue of a Worker, which is a giant made of cast iron. There's Armenian Impressionism, which I will be talking about in a little bit. There's paper mines, which includes poster art. Then there's One Day in Pompeii, which is archaeological artifacts. Then there's donators and donations of Vasasky, Chumbanian, Mahokian, and Matitian, which I will be talking about as well. To begin with, I have the Armenian Impressionism, which was shown from May 6, 2022 through August 2022. And these are 3 pieces from the exhibition. There's Chmanian Raphael Old Bridge in Avignon, which is from 1930, and it's oil on canvas. There's Rural Landscape, which is oil on cardboard. And lastly, there's John Morris in the Circus, which is oil on canvas as well. The exhibition Armenian Impressionism includes more than 70 paintings and graphic works by 24 artists, mainly active in the first 3 decades of the 20th century. Unique works by these artists that were Gevorg Bashinjagian, Yegish Tadavasian, Vahram Gaifedian, Karapet Charles Adamian, Martyros Saranian, Cedric Arakelian, Yervand Koetcher are the top artists that make up this exhibition. And I chose these 3 specific pieces because I like the colors that were used and the different sort of like themes. Because to the right, you're able to see how it's titled In the Circus for a reason. You're able to see that there's circus artifacts included, and to the left there's more of the title says it like a bridge, but I like how like the water looks and everything, and in the middle it's more like of a living situation. Next I have Dali and Picasso, which was from March 6, 2022 through March 6, 2020 through April 26, 2022. I have Satyr and the Peasant's Family, which is oil on canvas. And I have Environs of the Village. And lastly, Landscape with the Figures. All these 3 were some of the pieces that are included, which I decided to use because I like the aesthetic. I like the wilderness. I really like the colors in this exhibition specifically because they're darker, and I like how on the 2 pieces in the middle and the right, like the skies were like sunsetting, and I don't know, they give off the wilderness, and along with the one on the left that is also dark, yet you're able to perfectly see what is going on in this artwork. And the exhibition displays 260 artworks by Salvador Dali and Pablo Picasso, which includes sculptures, graphic works, and ceramics from the private collection of the President of Art of the Nations Foundation, patron of art, and collector Alexander Shadrin. My third exhibition is Donators and Donations of Vasaski, Chebanian, Mahokian, and Matation. And this exhibition was shown from October 2nd, 2021 through November 5th, 2021. And the one on the left is a self-portrait from 1980, which is oil on canvas. The one in the middle is titled Girl in Front of Cupid sculpture, which is also oil on canvas. And the last one is also self-portrait from 1954, which is also oil on canvas. And this exhibition includes pieces of the donators, and like obviously you're able to see the self-portrait, yet there's also some pieces from famous artists, just like the one in the middle. And it has different settings for each. And I just think it's an interesting exhibition because it has like a little bit of everything. And this is the first exhibition of the large project that is Donators and Donations in the National Gallery of Armenia. And the artworks that were selected of Ivan Alvasovsky and his partners Arsenet Chabanian, Barden Mahokian, and Emmanuel Matation are exhibited together for the first time, which I think shows how different kinds of artists can be included in one exhibition. And now for my choices of art pieces, I have The Sunrise in Fedosia by the artist Ivan Avasovsky, which was done in 1855, and the genre is pastoral, medium is oil painting. And I chose this art piece in particular because I personally like taking pictures of sunsets, and I think this is why I chose this one out of all of them. I really like the setting of this painting, and I feel like it connects to my identity because sunsets to me represent like calm, relaxing times. Just because when I drive to, for example, like the beach, there's water here, and it's just relaxing to me whenever like I'm stressed out. Like this is the way that I cope with my stress. My second piece is The Garland with the Virgin and Child by Daniel Segers, and it's oil on canvas and was painted in 1621, and the dimensions are 34.64 inches by 26.37 inches. And I chose this piece because it reminds me of the Virgin Mary, which connects to my culture. I'm Catholic, and I believe people, a part of the religion, would see a comparison. I like how the painting itself is dark, but the main subject is like we're painted white for a reason. I think you're able to tell what the focus is on. And the flowers that surround the Virgin and Child are not as bright as you'd normally see flowers, yet they're still able to stand out. Zegers did a great job when choosing his colors throughout this painting. There are different versions of this painting, but I like this one in particular because it was more of a like zoomed in, while the other versions are like show the whole body, and like I feel like you're able to see the details more in this version. And yeah, overall I feel like this connects to my identity and how I see my religion and the connections that I can make within my religion to this specific art piece. Thank you.
Hey guys, my name is Stephanie, and I'll be guiding through the collections aspect of the National Gallery of Armenia. So some quick facts and overview. The National Gallery of Armenia actually houses the world's largest Armenian fine arts collection with over 40,000 priceless fixtures showcased throughout the institution. However, although possessing high volumes of artwork originating from its native land, this museum also focuses heavily upon Russian as well as European pieces from select countries, while additionally paying homage to what they refer to as decorative applied art from across the globe. So as we'll explore a bit further in the succeeding slides, much of the artwork showcased in the gallery, despite origin, hold religious ties, and even make religion and deities a central theme throughout most of the collections in this gallery. So starting with the collections, first and foremost, I'm going to start off by introducing this collections of Armenian artwork, which primarily focuses upon exploring the evolution and development of Armenian masterpieces that span across the 6th through 20th centuries. And we're able to recognize a significant shift in inspiration between the more ancient works versus those that are closer to our modern day. So as we'll see in the next slide, as well as later on in my exploration, antiquities pieces originating from around the 6th century until up to the 17th century are primarily more religious, and they can be commonly referred to as medieval frescoes or even simply illustrated manuscripts. So although because of the destruction of time, the works that are currently showcased in this gallery are not necessarily the originals, but actually verified copies that officials say that actually hold the same appraisal value of the original should they have been still preserved. So from here, the collection also puts an emphasis on works originating from the 18th through 20th centuries, which are still actually very religiously themed, but also see the introduction of the landscape genre. In particular, the iconic seascape portraits created by renowned seascape painter Holvan Avaskovi, as shown in the upper right image included within this slide. And we have another staple of this time period, and these were pieces made by the Hovnatian family, so namely Jacob Hovnatian, which stressed depicting the individuality and social status of each of their models. So in fact, despite their different focal points, both of these genres basically, they just embody deep cultural connections specifically to Armenia, obviously, but also other Eastern countries. And so today, modern Armenian artists focus upon integrating symbolism, coloristic language, and even abstraction within their artistic representation. So as we see on this slide, we see the portrait of actress Kamara, and we see the different shades of blue that are used to accentuate depth and perspective of the figure's background, while the abstract model that we see here sits squarely in the center of the portrait, shrouded in deep black clothing, which is an image of elegance and sophistication. And so next to this, we also have the sunrise in Phoenicia, which is another example of a landscape piece that we previously discussed. And so as we see here, as the sun is rising in the horizon, we can feel a sense of hope and possibility with the beginning of a new day, or even the thought of rebirth. And so overall, I ended up choosing this collection simply because of how it was locally grown, and it basically showcases its homeland in a very positive and beautiful light. And so being that I'm not of this cultural identity or background, I was particularly drawn to this collection mainly through its aesthetics and simplistic beauty, and its overall like very beautiful nature scenes. So I simply just adore pieces that can make mundane things seem extraordinary, and as we can see with the sunrise, these works do that justice. Now we'll be moving on to the Russian artworks collection, which focuses primarily upon exploring the development and progression of Russian collections from the 16th through 20th centuries. So for a bit of breakdown, there were shifts in the common genres portrayed within popular works of that time. Within the 17th and 16th centuries alike, artists focused primarily upon curating works that revolved around common Russian livelihoods and traditions, such as a piece we'll see on the next slide that's titled What People Think About Me. So moving on to the early 18th century, there was this shift where art became much more secular, meaning that artists started to focus upon the spirit of human individuality and specific personality, opposed to a tie to a specific religion or background. So in effect, Russian artwork began to see a rise of landscape and still art pieces that indirectly illustrate the author's worldly perception and even their immediate material possession, meaning the things around them, basically. And so, such as these flower-based painting that we see on the top slide, the two showcased, as well as the flowers showcased in the bottom right corner. These landscape paintings began to gain more traction within the artistic realm, and a large majority of 19th century works eventually began to revolve around this genre. And simultaneously, we started to see a rise of portrait painting, as we'll explore in another painting that I chose to include called Portrait of I.L. Lazarev. However, as the Armenian art collection, artistic eras closer to the modern day once again became driven by emphasis on rich colors, symbolism, and dynamicism in the mundane. So basically, such works that we're exhibiting in these collections, both the prior one and the Russian artworks one, we see that it's basically very rooted in ordinary things, which is very beautiful. So now exploring a bit of particular paintings, here we have the portrait of I.L. Lazarev by Vasily Tropinin, which portrays an 18th century Russian political figure in a very regal and dignified manner. And this is very signature of Romanticism era portrait art, which occurred during the 1700s. Whereas on the right, we have the piece called What People Think About Me by Vasily Polanov. And here we see a more religiously tied scene being portrayed, which is characteristic of pre-18th century art, although it was created a bit later than that. But overall, I just chose this collection because of the exquisite evolution Russian art has undergone over the centuries. I just really love seeing the evolution of how these pieces started to change from portrait pieces and more what people today may call boring almost, which they obviously are not, but people may predispose them as this way, to the more vibrant still art and landscape portraits that modern day people are more inclined to. And so as for my personal ties to this, being that Christianity is very rooted in these type of pieces, I just thought that this could embody my personal culture and identity being of Catholic faith. And so now our final collection will be Western European artworks, which explores masterpieces originating from a range of European nations, including Italy, Netherlands, France, and even more. So concerning Italy's artworks, these pieces are deeply rooted within ideals of the High Renaissance, which involves religious aspects such as a portrait we'll see on the next slide once again. And it also explores man's organic ties to nature and the concept of mannerism. Similarly, the Dutch portraits showcased within this gallery are from the 1700s and thus representative of Baroque style art forms, including large church and palace altar paintings and elegant portrait paintings, such as the one that we see here in the upper right-hand corner. And in the 1700s, relating to France, salon paintings were a big phenomenon that basically combined sentimentalism and classicism for a single art form. Because of this, sensual works and dramatic landscapes were highly coveted. And lastly, in Germany and Switzerland, they had a very different art form. In fact, in these places, embodied graphic sketch forms or forms of allegorical sculpture art were actually the norm. And its examples of these are in the bottom right-hand corner picture, which showcases a sculpture collection room. As for the sample pieces for this collection, we see Portrait of Nicola Cucci by Bernardo Strozzi. This was a work of Italian portrait painting, which shows Cucci in a red drape, which is usually a symbol of high nobility and power within the religious world. Since I could not find much concrete information on who Cucci was himself, I just kind of drew from how he was portrayed in this portrait. Seeing the appearance of a white collar around his neck alone, I presumed that he held a very high position, likely within the clergy. And this was a common profession for which individuals would receive portrait paintings. So it's very likely it ties to the high Renaissance era of the 1600s that was experienced in Italy. And for our second example, we have the battle between Alexander the Great and Darius, which portrays a battle scene in Baroque style. So through this, the powerful and domineering attitude of these gladiators shines through boldly while depicting a sense of fragility and concession within their opposers. So overall, the reason why I picked this collection relates to the heightened diversity and broadness exhibited within the set. Overall, I just really enjoyed being able to practically travel across Europe without leaving my seat, and even across time. So now going to my specific piece, I chose to delve more into depth into the summer house backyard, which was created by Marc Chagall. Debuting in 1918, this oil and cardboard landscape portrait was created in Belarus and measures approximately 23.8 by 18.1 inches. The inspiration for this portrait is quite explicit, since we see that it's basically just Chagall drawing his view looking out a window into the backyard of his home in the south of France. So it showcases a very serene scene of lush greenery, including large trees, bushes, and grass, outlined by what appears to be like a paved path with a quaint patio set off to the side and some solo lawn chairs as well, which it helps accentuate the comfort, obviously, and the sense of home in this painting. So finding a lot of my identity rooted to my musical taste, this portrait really correlated to the vibe of one of my favorite albums, which is Folklore by Taylor Swift. And so I felt a very great pull towards this because it was very melancholic almost, but it was actually very comforting as well. And so I felt as if I could place myself in this portrait and be the one sitting on the windowsill and possibly even reading a book and sipping some hot cocoa on a rainy day. And so I just really loved the charm and the sensation of this piece and how it made me feel. Now looking at my second piece, it's actually an example of an Armenian illustrated manuscript titled The Annunciation of Virgin Mary by Grigor of Sivnik. And it was created sometime in the late 14th century and completed on parchment with slight gold leaf detailing. It was made locally within ancient Armenia and measures approximately 3.9 by 5.6 inches. The history behind this creation is rather intricate. However, at the root of it all, these manuscripts began to gain traction upon the creation of the Armenian alphabet in the 5th century. So from here, such works developed in longer and more plot-oriented manuscripts referred to as miniatures, such as this one. And so predominantly used in Armenian ornamentation, these manuscripts were very religiously themed and thus hidden away in inaccessible monasteries during war times in an attempt to be protected further. So, however, during war times, secular armies may target them and directly because of their sanctity within the community, which actually did happen. And so ultimately, although many of the surviving pieces were ultimately destroyed and stolen by Turkish aggressors during World War I, these authentic replicas on display, such as the one included here, are still considered original works of significant value. So particular to this piece, it's basically a visual representation of the Virgin Mary, who we see here on the right, who is draped in a very heavenly blue, which symbolizes the healing power of God. It's her incarnation by the angel Gabriel. And so we see him off to the side, and he's very shrouded in harmonious green hues. So personally, I very much love this masterpiece, being that it reflected on the religious side of my cultural identity. So being raised Catholic, religious pieces such as this remind me of childhood and experiences of attending Sunday Mass and even catechism. So it's very much a feeling of nostalgia and comfort. So seeing these types of artworks around the church and all their mesmerizing and bold coloring has always fascinated me. And so, especially given that this piece was created in a time where not many art supplies were readily available to artists. And so simply based on the coloring alone, I don't believe we give these artists enough credit necessarily for the amount of diligence and determination that a creation such as this would require. And I just think we should take the time to appreciate work such as this a bit more, because they're really like feats of impossibility.